Hello, sports fans, and in this one today, this is episode 3, NFL free agency. I'll be going through every single team and talking about their additions in the 2020 season. I'll go through all the big names and I'll give my thoughts on that, but other than that, I'll just quickly run through every team and every player that they got. So to start off with the Arizona Cardinals, first, they got Devondre Campbell, linebacker. He used to play for the Atlanta Falcons, and they signed him on a one-year deal worth up to $8.5 million. Next up, they got Kenyon Drake. They just placed the franchise tag on him on March 21st. And then Larry Fitzgerald re-signed with the Cardinals on a one-year, $11 million contract. Next up, they got Marcus Gilbert. They re-signed him to a one-year, $1.5 million contract worth up to $3.7 million incentives. And then with the biggest trade of this offseason, I would agree with, would be DeAndre Hopkins acquired in a trade along with the Texans. And the Texans got David Johnson in exchange in the trade, and the 2020 second-round pick and the 2021 fourth-rounder. So this will be a really good pickup for the Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray. He has a new weapon behind him. And then, as I had already said, they got their running back in Kenyon Drake. Next up, they got Devon Kennard. I believe he played in the Lions. They signed him to a 3-year, $20 million contract. And then lastly, for the team, they got Jordan Phillips, defensive tackle, and they signed on a 3-year contract. Next up, you got the Atlanta Falcons, and starting off with them, they had gotten Deion Buchanan, agreed on terms with the deal with the Falcons, and he is coming from a rival in their division, and that'll be the Buccaneers. And then next, they got Tyler Davidson from the New Orleans Saints. He agreed on a 3-year, $12 million deal that includes a $4 million guarantee. And next up, they got Dante Fowler Jr. He used to play on the Rams. He used to play on the Jaguars as well. He agreed to a 3-year deal worth of $48 million with the Falcons. And arguably their biggest signing of this free agency, they got Todd Gurley. He agreed on a 1-year, $6 million deal with the Falcons. He will receive a bonus of $7.5 million from the Rams, and there is a $2.5 million offset. In total, he will get $11 million to play in 2020. Next up, they got Charles Harris. He acquired in a trade with the Dolphins in exchange for a 2021 7th-round draft pick. And another really good pickup that I like that the Falcons got, they got Hayden Hurst, tight end from the Ravens. He was acquired in a trade with an exchange of a 2020 second and 5th-round pick. So that'll be a really good pickup, young player, talented. Next up, you got the Baltimore Ravens. Biggest move that they made arguably would be Calais Campbell, and they acquired him in a trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars in exchange for a 5th-round pick, and they're finalizing a 2-year deal, $27 million. With that, he can include a $20 million guarantee, so he'll be getting paid a lot. Next up, they got DJ Flucker. Signed a 1-year deal with the Ravens. Next up, they got Matt Judon. He's an edge rusher. The team placed a franchise tag on him. And then the team placed a original round tender on the restricted free agent, Matt Skura. If any other team decides to sign a contract to him, Baltimore doesn't match, then the Ravens will not receive any compensation. So it's kind of a here you go type player that they're just sending out in free agency. And next up, they re-signed Jimmy Smith to a 1-year deal, $6 million contract. And then after that, they got Jihad Ward, agreed on a return on a 1-year deal. And then lastly, for the team, they got Derek Wolfe. He agreed on a 1-year, $3 million contract, fully guaranteed, and up to $6 million with the incentives. Next up, you got the Buffalo Bills. So here's the details. So they added Mario Addison. He agreed on a 3-year, $30 million contract that includes $15 million in guarantees. They added Vernon Butler, signing a deal with the Bills on a 2-year deal worth up to $18 million, 9.3 guaranteed. And the biggest move with the team, they got Stephon Diggs acquired in a trade with the Vikings along with the 2020 7th round draft pick in exchange for a 2020 first pick, 5th pick, 6th pick, and a 2021 4th pick. So in pick-wise, they did give up a lot in my opinion, but it's Stephon Diggs, so I mean, you have to do what you got to do to get a player like that. Next up, they got EJ Gaines. He agreed on a 1-year deal with the team. They got Quentin Jefferson. He's expected to sign with the Bills on a 2-year deal. They also got Josh Norman. He agreed on a 1-year, $6 million contract with a value of $8 million in incentives. Quentin Spain, he re-signed to a 3-year, $15 million contract. And lastly, they got Darrell Williams, offensive lineman, signing a 1-year deal with the team. Next up, you got the Carolina Panthers, and here's the details. So they re-signed Robbie Anderson to a 2-year, $20 million contract. That includes $12 million in year 1, and I believe next is just incentives for the $8 million remaining on the table. And then they also went out to go sign Eli Apple, who used to play for the Saints. He signed on a 1-year, $3 million contract that includes $750 signing bonus. Next up, they got re-signed Trey Boston on a 3-year, $18 million contract with $9.5 million in the first year. And then next, they got Teddy Bridgewater from the New Orleans Saints as well. He signed a 3-year, $63 million contract. And next, they got Farrell Cooper. He's a wide receiver. He signed a 1-year contract. And lastly, they added Seth Roberts, another wide receiver. He signed a 1-year, $3.75 million contract. And to add on, they actually got PJ Walker, and he was in really high talks on ESPN and everything because of the fact that he's coming from the XFL league. For those that don't know about that league, it was an NFL league, or not like an NFL league, but it was like a copycat basically, like players that didn't make it in the NFL or players that were really good in college that couldn't make it to the NFL. They came to this league, and it was actually pretty cool. I liked it. But yeah, he's one of the few people that are coming from that league. So we'll see what goes with that if anything happens to Teddy Bridgewater. Next up, you got the Chicago Bears. So to start off, they got Artie Burns. He signed a 1-year deal. Dion Bush, he re-signed on a 1-year deal worth $1.4 million. And they also got Nick Foles. He was acquired in the trade with Jacksonville Jaguars, and the trade was as follows. So it was in exchange for a 4th round pick and a restructured contract with the Bears. He will pay $8 million per year over the next 3 seasons, with $6.5 million available in incentives each year. But Foles can void the deal in 2021 and 2022 based on performance. So to quickly, for these next two, they both play for the Saints, and that is Ted Ginn and Jimmy Graham. Ted Ginn, he signed a 1-year deal with the Bears. There's no money situation like on the news, so I don't know how much worth. But Jimmy Graham, he signed a 2-year deal worth $16 million. And that contract will include $9 million guaranteed and has no trade clause. So Jimmy Graham is pretty set in stone in Chicago for 2 years. Lastly, for the Bears, they got Robert Quinn, edge. He agreed to a 5-year, $70 million contract. And yeah, that'll be that for that team. For the next team, it'll be the Cincinnati Bengals, and this will pretty much be really quick as they didn't do too much on free agency as to this point. So they got Mackenzie Alexander signing a 1-year, $4 million contract. They signed Von Bell, which is also a ex-New Orleans Saint, and he agreed to a 3-year, $18 million deal that will pay him $7 million in year 1. And next they they re-signed AJ Green, but they placed a franchise tag on him. Don't know why they would do that to that type of player in that franchise, but I'm not the general manager and things, so I have no say in that. And lastly, for the team, they agreed on a deal with DJ Reader. He's a defensive tackle, and that is a 4-year, $53 million contract, fully guaranteed. Now to move on, the Cleveland Browns. So to start off, they signed a defensive tackle, Andrew Billings. He signed a 1-year, $3.5 million fully guaranteed. They had also added Adrian Claiborne. He signed a 2-year deal, $6 million, and it'll be worth up to $7 million with incentives. Next, they got Jack Conklin. He agreed to terms on a 3-year deal, $42 million, with $30 million fully guaranteed, so more than half his contract, which is really good for his situation. BJ Goodson, linebacker, he agreed on a 1-year deal. Austin Hooper, who used to play for the Falcons, he signed a 4-year, $42 million contract with $20 million guaranteed in 2 years. The team also placed a second-round tender on the restricted free agent Kareem Hunt. And next, they got Kevin Johnson. He signed a 1-year, $3.5 million, and that is max value of $6 million. Next up, they got Carl Joseph signing with the Browns on a 1-year deal. And lastly, for the team, they got Case Keenum, and his contract details are as follows. It's a 3-year, $18 million deal, including $10 million guaranteed. Next up, you got the Dallas Cowboys. So to start off, they got Anthony Brown, cornerback, signed a 3-year deal worth $15.5 million. Next up, they got Clinton Dix from I believe he played with the Bears this season. He used to be an X-Factor, but anyways, they signed him to a 1-year deal worth $4 million guaranteed, or $4 million with $2.5 million guaranteed. And then they re-signed Amari Cooper on a 5-year deal, $100 million. That includes $60 million guaranteed and $40 million at signing, and another $20 million for injuries that becomes fully guaranteed on the 5th day of the 2020 league year. So they really went out, gave this guy all their money, so hopefully he performs as he should, because of all that money, the team could easily trade him, which they'd be kind of dumb for doing. Next, they got a quarterback, which is very surprising due to the fact that they have a quarterback in Dak Prescott. The quarterback is Andy Dalton from the Cincinnati Bengals, which is very surprising because of age and performance is a factor when it comes to him. So don't really see eye to eye with the Cowboys on this one. Anyway, he signed a 1-year deal worth up to $7 million. It includes $3 million guaranteed. Next, they got Cameron Irving, offensive lineman, signed a 1-year deal with the team. They signed kicker Kai Forbath. Terms not yet disclosed, so don't know too much about that. Next, they signed Blake Jarwin, they re-signed Blake Jarwin to a 3-year deal worth $24 million with $9.25 million guaranteed. So in my opinion, they really lowballed him with that. They're like, here's all this money, but wait, you only get 2% of it. Next up, they got they re-signed Sean Lee, and they signed him on a 1-year, $4.5 million guaranteed. And then lastly, they got Gerald McCoy from the Buccaneers, and he agreed to terms on a deal with 3 years, $18.3 million guaranteed. That can reach up to $20 million with the incentives. Actually, they got one more player in Dontari Poe, and the details for that contract is not yet disclosed. And this is also the team that surprisingly signed Aldon Smith, edge. He agreed to a 1-year deal, $2 million. That could be up to worth $4 million. He is currently suspended by the league, has applied for reinstatement though, and has passed through it, so he'll be good to go when it comes to game time. Next up, you got the Denver Broncos. So to start off, they got AJ Bouye, and he was acquired in a trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars in exchange for a 2020 4th-round pick. So that'll be that. And then they also got Jarrell Casey. He was acquired in a trade with the Tennessee Titans in exchange for a 7th-round draft pick. So that's 2 trades for the team on the offseason. They also got Melvin Gordon. He agreed on terms with the Broncos on a 2-year, $16 million deal and $13.5 million guaranteed. So he'll stay in the division with the Chargers and play him twice a year. So that'll actually be fun to watch. Moving on, they got Shelby Harris, defensive tackle. He's re-signing with the Broncos on a 1-year, $3.25 million. Lastly, they signed tight end Nick Vannett. He signed on a 2-year deal with the Broncos. The money is not disclosed yet, so can't give too much detail on that. Next up, you got the Detroit Lions. So to start off with the Detroit Lions, they went out and signed Geronimo Allison to a 1-year, $910,000 deal guaranteed. They signed Jamie Collins, a linebacker. He agreed on terms to a 3-year, $30 million contract that includes $18 million fully guaranteed. They went out and signed Chase Daniel, quarterback. He agreed on a deal with the Lions. They went out and got Deron Harmon. He was acquired in a trade from the New England Patriots along with the 2020 7th round draft pick. And then they got in exchange for a 2020 5th round draft pick and the player. So that'll be that. Next, they got Jaron Kearse, safety. He signed a 1-year, $2.7 million guarantee or deal guaranteed. They got Miles Kilbrew. He agreed on terms with the Lions. Money is not disclosed yet. Also, they had gotten Danny Shelton. He agreed on a 2-year deal, $8 million guarantee. They went out and got or re-signed Desmond Trufant. He agreed to terms with the Lions on a 2-year, $21 million contract. So that'll be that with that team. Next up, you got the Green Bay Packers. So the Green Bay Packers, first move, they went out and got Christian Kirksey. He signed a 2-year deal, $16 million. Next up, they got Devin Funchess, wide receiver. He signed a 1-year, $2.5 million that has a max value of $6.25 million. They re-signed tight end Mercedes Lewis. He re-signed on a 1-year deal with a base value of $2.25 million with more than $1 million guaranteed. Next, they got Rick Wagner, offensive tackle. Money is not disclosed yet, but he agreed to terms with the Packers. So that's that. Alright, and next up, the Houston Texans. So with their first move, they went out and got Randall Cobb, wide receiver. He agreed to a 3-year, $27 million guaranteed. $18 million of the 27 is guaranteed. And then after that, the Texans are making a trade with the Los Angeles Rams, and that is for the wide receiver, Brandon Cooks. They also sent over a 4th round pick. That's the Rams. They sent that to the Texans for an exchange for a 2020 2nd round pick. And that's it. So again, very surprising. Such little price for a really good player. So we'll see how that turns out. Next up, the team, they re-signed Kai Fairbairn, their kicker, to a 4-year, $17 million contract. And then after that, they went out and agreed to terms with Vernon Hargreaves, cornerback. And lastly, they re-signed A.J. McCarron to a 1-year, $4 million contract, which $3.7 million is guaranteed of that. And as I already said, David Johnson, he was acquired in a trade. So to move on, next up, you got the Indianapolis Colts. With their first offseason move, they went out and got DeForest Buckner, and they acquired him in a trade in exchange for their 1st round pick, which is number 13. And the Colts are also giving Buckner a massive extension worth $21 million per season. They also went out and got Trey Burton. He's a tight end. He agreed on terms with the team, and it's adding a 1-year deal with the league minimum money. And then next up, they got Anthony Castonzo, offensive tackle, agreed to a 2-year, $33 million guaranteed. Next up, they got Xavier Rhodes from the Minnesota Vikings. He signed a 1-year deal with a base value of $3 million, including a $1 million signing bonus. And the contract also includes $250 in incentives. And arguably their biggest move of the offseason and in the NFL, the team somehow landed quarterback Phillip Rivers on a 1-year, $25 million fully guaranteed contract. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I really thought that Phillip Rivers was going to retire as a Charger, as I'm sure everybody else did. But yeah, that should be interesting. Next up, you got the Jacksonville Jaguars. With their first move, they went out and got Tyler Eifert. He signed a 2-year deal worth $15.5 million. And then after that, they had acquired Mike Glennon. He agreed to terms with the Jaguars. No money situation is disclosed. They went out and got Rodney Gunter, defensive lineman. He agreed on terms with the deal the team announced also. And next up, they got they re-signed Yannick Njoku. They placed a franchise tag on him, and I believe this offseason I did read a couple articles, him saying that he was very angry with the team for doing that, and I believe he said that he was requesting a trade, but I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. Next up, they got Joe Sherbert. He agreed to a 5-year, $53 million contract, and that includes $22.5 million guaranteed. And lastly, they got Al Woods. He signed a 1-year, $2.75 million contract that includes $1 million fully guaranteed. Next up, you got the Kansas City Chiefs. So here's the details. They re-signed Brashad Breeland. He signed a 1-year deal worth up to $4.5 million. They went out and signed Taco Charlton. He signed a 1-year, $825,000 guaranteed with the Chiefs. They also went out and signed quarterback Chad Henne, or they re-signed him actually, to a 2-year, $3.25 million, and that'll be $2 million guaranteed in 2020. On their defensive tackle, Chris Jones, they placed a franchise tag on him. They re-signed Demarcus Robinson on a 1-year, $2.2 million guaranteed contract. They re-signed Damian Williams. They picked up his contract option for 2020, and so yeah, that'll be that for that team. Next up, you got the Las Vegas Raiders, and that sounds really weird to say, because obviously, as you guys know, the team has been in Oakland for years and years, so Las Vegas sounds really weird, but yeah. So here's the details. They went out and signed a wide receiver in Nelson Aguilar from the Philadelphia Eagles last year. And this deal for me is very surprising as to how they landed him, because I really thought that Nelson Aguilar was going to stick with the Eagles and stick with that team just because he's a young player and he's talented. But yeah, that's really weird. Anyway, the deal is worth $1 million, of which $887,000 is guaranteed. The team also went out and signed Prince Amukamara. He agreed to terms on a deal with the Raiders. They also got Devontae Booker. He signed a deal with the Raiders as well. No money is disclosed. They went out and signed Malik Collins, a defensive tackle. He agreed on a 1-year deal worth $6 million, $5.75 million fully guaranteed. The team also signed Jeff Heath. He's signing a deal with the Raiders on 2 years worth up $8 million. And lastly, they got Marcus Mariota, and he signed a 2-year deal, $17.6 million guaranteed, and that is guaranteed for the 1 year, and after that, the next year, the rest is not fully guaranteed. But this move really surprises me too, just because it's Marcus Mariota, and again, I really thought that he would stick with this team for like as young as he is, so it's really weird to see him agree with the team that has a quarterback in Derek Carr. Yes, I know he's not the most talented, but he seems like their franchise quarterback to everybody else's eyes, so it's weird how a team signed another really good quarterback, but yeah, we'll see what happens with that. And then to quickly add on, the Raiders had also signed Jason Witten from the Dallas Cowboys. I really thought he was going to retire as a Cowboy, like for good, but I guess he had other plans. He signed a 1-year deal, $40 million, that includes $3.5 million fully guaranteed, and so yeah, that's that for that team. Next up, you got the Los Angeles Chargers. So here's the details. Brian Bulaga, he's an offensive tackle. He signed a 3-year, $30 million contract. And then you got Austin Eckler. He re-signed on a 4-year, $24.5 million contract that includes $15 million guaranteed. After that, you got Chris Harris, Jr., cornerback, signing with the team on a 2-year, $17 million. That'll have a max value of $20 million and including $7.5 million guaranteed. Next up, you got Hunter Henry. The team placed a franchise tag on him. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. They also got a trade going on, and that's for Trey Turner, offensive guard. He was in a trade with the Carolina Panthers in exchange for left tackle Russell Okung. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out for them. So next up, you got the Los Angeles Rams, and here's the details on them. So they went out and got Austin Blythe, offensive lineman. He agreed on a 1-year, $3.9 million guaranteed. 3.5 of that, 3.9 is guaranteed. And then next up, they got Michael Brockers, defensive tackle. After the deal with the Ravens fell through, Brockers agreed to stay with the Rams, and that is on a 3-year contract, and that'll be worth up to $31.5 million contract. So that's a really hefty contract, but we'll see how that goes with that team. Next up, you got the Los Angeles Rams. They went out and got Leonard Floyd. He's signing a 1-year, $10 million fully guaranteed. That could be up to worth $13.5 million with incentives. Next up, they re-signed Andrew Whitworth, and he is re-signing on a 3-year, $30 million contract. That includes $12.5 million guaranteed and has a max value of $37.5 million. So yeah, that'll be it for that team. Next team, you got the Miami Dolphins, and here's the details for this team. So they re-signed Adrian Colbert, safety, on a 1-year, $1.75 million contract. They signed Eric Flowers, offensive tackle, to a 3-year, $30 million contract. That includes $19.9 million fully guaranteed. They went out and signed Jordan Howard, running back. He signed a 2-year, $10 million contract. Next up, they got Byron Jones, cornerback, signed a 5-year, $82 million contract. That includes $54 million guaranteed. And then after that, they got Shaq Lawson, and he agreed to a 3-year, $30 million contract with the Dolphins. And lastly, they got Kyle Van Noy. He's a linebacker. He signed a 4-year, $51 million. That has included a $30 million guaranteed. So yeah, that'll be it for that team. Next up, you got the Minnesota Vikings, and here's the details for this. So they re-signed Amir Abdullah. He re-signed with the team. No money disclosed. They went out and signed Dan Bailey. He agreed to terms on a new deal, and that deal is 3 years, $10 million contract. And then next up, they got CJ Ham, fullback, re-signed with the team on a 4-year, $12.2 million contract. They franchise tagged Anthony Harris. They re-signed Sean Manion with the team. So that'll be that for that team. Next team, you got the New England Patriots. The details on their team is as follows. So they got Bial Allen, defensive tackle. He's signing a 2-year deal worth up to $8 million guaranteed. They got wide receiver Demir Bird, signing a 1-year deal worth up to $2.5 million. Then they re-signed Brian Hoyer to a 1-year deal, my bad. And then they went out and got Marquise Lee. He signed with the Patriots. No money is disclosed. They went out and signed safety Devin McCourty to a 2-year, $23 million contract, $17 million guaranteed. Then they went out and signed safety Adrian Phillips. The veteran has agreed to a contract with the team. So yeah, that'll be that with that team. Next up, you got the New Orleans Saints, and here's the details. So Drew Brees, he's a quarterback. He re-signed with the team on a 2-year contract with roughly up to $50 million, fully guaranteed. The team went out and signed Anthony Chiquillo. He signed on a 1-year deal. And the backup quarterback, Taysom Hill, after placing a first-round tender on the restricted free agents, the Saints signed him to a 2-year, $21 million extension that includes $16 million guaranteed and could be worth up to $22 million. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Next, the team signed Malcolm Jenkins, safety. He's actually returning to the Saints for after a couple years, or more than a couple years now. He used to play for the Saints. But he agreed on a 4-year, $32 million contract that includes $16.2 million fully guaranteed and has a max value of $35 million when including incentives. The team had also signed Ty Montgomery. No money disclosed on that. David Onyemata, he re-signed with the team for 3 years and $27 million. The team also signed Andreas Pete. He agreed to stay with the team on a 5-year contract that is worth up to $57.5 million, with $33 million guaranteed. The Saints had also waited and actually snagged up Emmanuel Sanders, wide receiver, to a 2-year deal, $16 million contract. The team had also went out and signed DJ Swearinger, safety. He agreed to a 1-year, $1.1 million contract. And lastly, the team had gone out and not re-signed, but they signed Jameis Winston, quarterback. He signed a 1-year, $1.1 million that has a max value of $4.7 million guaranteed with incentives. And next up, you got the New York Giants to start off. They got James Bradbury. He agreed to a 3-year, $45 million deal with $32 million guaranteed. They had also got another defensive back in Nate Ebner. He agreed to join the Giants. No money is disclosed on that. After that, they got Kyler Fackrell. He's a linebacker. He agreed to a 1-year deal, $4.6 million. They also went out and signed Cam Fleming. He's a tackle, signing 1 year, $3.5 million. That includes $2 million guaranteed and has a max value of $4 million. Next up, they got Dion Lewis, running back. He agreed to terms. No money is disclosed on his contract. So next up, you got the New York Jets. To start off, they got Josh Andrews. He's a center. He's signing with the team. No money has been disclosed. Next up, they got Pierre Desir. He's a cornerback. He agreed to terms on a 1-year deal, $5.5 million guaranteed. They got George Fant. He agreed to terms on a 3-year deal, $27.3 million with a max value of $30 million. Next up, they got Joe Flacco, which is a very surprising move for me for age and performance. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. He agreed on a 1-year deal with $1.5 million, and that agreed with another $3 million in incentives. So yeah, we'll see how that goes for them. And next up, they got Frank Gore. He's signing on a 1-year, $1.05 million contract. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Don't see eye to eye with the front office signing 2 older players. Not super talented, but yeah, see how that goes. And lastly, they got Brashad Perryman. He's signing a 1-year deal worth up to $8 million, and that includes $6 million guaranteed. So yeah, that'll be that for that team. Next up, the next team is the Philadelphia Eagles, and their details are as follows. So to start off, they got Jatavius Brown, linebacker. He's signing a 1-year deal with the Eagles. Next, they got Javon Hargrave. He's a nose tackle. He agreed to a 3-year, $39 million guaranteed contract. 26 of that 39 is guaranteed at least. They got Rodney McLeod. He's a safety. He agreed to a 2-year, $12 million contract. They also re-signed Jalen Mills to a 1-year contract, up to $5 million guaranteed. He is also a safety. They went out and signed Darius Slay. He's acquired in trade, actually, in exchange for a 3rd-rounder, 5th-rounder pick from the team. And as part of the deal, Philly Slay receives a 3-year, $50 million extension with $30 million guaranteed. So yeah, we'll see how that goes for the team. Next up, you got the Pittsburgh Steelers. So to start off, Bud Dupree, he's an edge, and the team had placed franchise tag on Dupree. Their actual first signing is Eric Ebron. He signed a 2-year, $12 million contract with the team. They went out and signed Derek Watt, signed a 3-year, $9.7 million contract that is $3.2 million guaranteed. They went out and signed Chris Wormley. He's a defensive tackle. He was actually in a trade with the Ravens, along with the 2021 7th-round draft pick in exchange for a 5th-round draft pick. And then lastly, they got Sven Wisnowski. Don't know how to pronounce that, so my bad. But he signed a 2-year deal with the team. Next team up, you got the San Francisco 49ers. And their first move, they re-signed Eric Armstead, defensive line. They re-signed him to a 5-year contract worth up to $85 million. That includes $48 million guaranteed. They went out and signed Travis Benjamin, wide receiver, to a 1-year deal worth up to $2 million. They also went out and re-signed Jimmy Ward to a 3-year contract worth up to $28.5 million. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. And lastly, they went out and acquired Trent Williams with the trade with the Redskins in exchange for a 5th rounder for this year and a 2021 3rd rounder. So yeah, well, that's it for that team. Next up, you got the Seattle Seahawks, and here's the details. So they got Philip Dorsett. He's a wide receiver. He's signing a 1-year deal with $1.05 million guaranteed. They went out and acquired Quentin Dunbar in a trade with the Washington Redskins for a 5th round pick. And then they got BJ Finney, offensive line, signing a deal with the team on 2 years, $8 million guaranteed. And then they signed Carlos Hyde, running back. He agreed on terms with the deal with $4 million on his 1-year contract. And Bruce Irvin, he's expected to re-sign with the Seahawks. And then Mikey Potty, he agreed to terms on a 1-year deal with the Seahawks. And then the biggest move for the Seahawks on the news this offseason would have to be Greg Olsen, tight end. He received a 1-year, $7 million contract back in February. So we'll see how that goes. Greg Olsen, as you guys may have already known, played years and years with the Panthers. Now he's on a new team. So we'll see how successful he can be with them. And yeah, that'll be it for that team. Next up, you got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So their first move is Shaquille Barrett. The team is placing their franchise tag on Barrett, and the biggest move for the team and possibly for the NFL is Tom Brady. And the details are as follows. So he signed a deal with the Buccaneers on a 2-year, $50 million guaranteed, worth up to $4.5 million in performance-based incentives. The deal is also including a no-trade clause and a no-tag clause. So Tom Brady is set in stone to, in my opinion, retire as a Buccaneer, as there's a no-trade clause and a no-tag clause. And so yeah, we'll see how that goes with that team. And lastly, their move in re-signing Jason Pierre-Paul. He re-signed on a 2-year deal, $27 million. So yeah, that'll be it for that team. Next up, you got the Tennessee Titans, and this is their moves. So with their first move, they got Vic Beasley. He agreed to a 1-year, $9.5 million fully guaranteed with a max value of $12 million. And then their next move is they placed the franchise tag on Derrick Henry. And after that, they signed Jonathan Joseph. He agreed on a 1-year deal with up to $2.2 million, $1.5 million guaranteed. And then lastly, they agreed to terms on a deal with Ryan Tannehill on a 4-year, $118 million guaranteed. 62 of that, $18 million is guaranteed. I believe that Ryan Tannehill will be their starting quarterback week 1 due to the fact that Marcus Mariota was traded, as I had already said. Next up, you got the Washington Redskins, and their details are as follows. So they acquired in a trade with the Carolina Panthers Kyle Allen, quarterback, in exchange for a 5th round pick. Peyton Barber, running back, he signed a 2-year, $3 million contract with $600,000 guaranteed. They went out and signed Ronald Darby, cornerback, signed a 1-year, $3 million guaranteed, $4 million with incentives. And lastly, they signed Kendall Fuller, 4-year contract, roughly $40 million guaranteed. So yeah, we'll see how that goes with that team. And with that'll wrap up my 3rd episode on this podcast. And be sure to expect my next podcast here in a couple of days, maybe next week. It'll be episode 4, and that'll be about the NBA restart and my predictions all the way through regular season, playoffs, and championship. So yeah, alright guys, see you guys in the next one.